Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another video here on the PokerStaples channel. This is a very different video than you've ever seen on this channel. This is a conversation with the one and only Doug Polk Poker. If you guys watch poker on YouTube, you've definitely seen his channel. Probably the biggest poker channel, I think, in our industry. So we are having a little bit of a debate on Twitter on a couple topics. And so I said, hey, why don't we just talk this out and make a video? So something of a podcast, almost 90 minutes in length. We cover a lot of things, talking about success, talking about what it means to be a poker pro, talking about Twitch streaming, all the way to healthcare in the US of A. Craziness all over the place. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you want to see more content like this, because I had quite a good time having this conversation. I enjoyed it. So without further ado, enjoy the video. So I'm here today with Doug Polk, and I reached out on Twitter and I was like, maybe we should have a conversation about this because a little bit of drama kicked off today on a couple topics. So I figured we should talk it through.
Yeah, it was an interesting morning. I didn't, things that I normally argue about on Twitter are things like rake, the classics. But no, it was a little bit different today. We actually have a couple subjects I think we want to discuss. We're at least my understanding is we're going to discuss sort of streaming as a profession, or is it sustainable long run, and then also what exactly, I guess really how much exactly do you need to be making to be a poker professional? And also sort of a caveat to that is, what is the definition of success when it comes to playing poker? I'm not putting words in your mouth there.
I mean, let me lay down the premise here, okay? Let me talk about the tweet that went out. So there's two tweets, and I'm going to start with sort of the one that we've been arguing with most, which is I put out a tweet saying, been thinking about the old advice threads on 2+2 poker forums where regular poker players were ridiculed by others wanting to turn pro for anything less than $100,000 a year. Why is the 100K the benchmark for making it? And then I sort of go through my reasons as to why I don't think that's particularly a useful benchmark. And then I talk about my own experience a little bit. Now, you on Twitter have said that you think 100K is a reasonable benchmark and what you should shoot for to turn pro as a poker player.
Right, yeah.
So to me, like, the first thing that my mind jumps to and why I take issue with your stance on that is, let's just take a look at the world as a whole, man. How many people earn $100,000 a year? Like, what percentage of the population? It's got to be like very small, right? Like 0.4% of the entire population of the world, maybe something like.
Are making 100K a year?
Yeah.
No, it's got to be more than that, right? I mean, like,
no, I don't think so.
So, like, in America, what percentage of people are making over that? Like something like 10%, 8%.
Well, we should look this up, shouldn't we?
Well, I mean, I'm just guessing here.
I think there's less than 1% of America that makes over 100K a year.
Oh, you're way wrong.
If we're talking joint family income, like, yes, but like individual, I think it's less than 1%.
Well, I mean, just let's think about it like this, right? Like, how much do doctors make?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
Quite a bit, like more than 100K, but they're also not the benchmark of what is acceptable or what you should shoot for in a society. Right?
If I had to guess, Jamie, I would say, and I'm just guessing here, I would say approximately 8% of America makes over 100K, roughly.
8%. I would say it could
be
around
higher.
1%. I think it's around 1%.
Okay.
The audience will obviously be able to tell in the re-airing of this.
Right.
But that's beside the point, right? To me, when I hear you say that, it really frustrates me because I feel like there is so much of the world that doesn't aspire to hit that level of success, and they're not wrong for not setting themselves up for that life. I think me and you, I see a lot of similarities in what we're shooting for in terms of like the level of success we'd want. So perhaps our blueprint is very similar, and I'm not taking issue with how you're approaching it for your life. But I am taking issue when you tell other people that's how they should go for it. So doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, okay. So let's actually like kind of boil this down more specifically, because there's a couple different things that are at play here. First off, it's different. So in your original tweet, you said that, how much you need to make to live, essentially. Going pro means to live, and how much money is making it or making it or whatever you want to, however you want to phrase that. And those things are different, right? Like making it is more of a subject of your own opinion. What is making it to you? What is successful to your own goals? But playing for a living is not. Playing for a living is you're making enough money to have a reasonable life playing the game. That's not like subjective. That's just like more factual, right?
Well,
and so like, you know, when you think about playing poker for a living, there are some essential differences between playing poker versus traditional career paths. And they're important differences. The first one is that, let's just say that your ability stays the same every year. You will make less money year over year because the people around you will become better. Additionally, there is great variability in when your income or how often you're paid and when your income, you actually receive your income. And so you need to have more money, you know, essentially bankrolled away or saved to be able to live during those tougher times. And then additionally, there's all kinds, like a myriad of other issues that you're going to face, like self-employment taxes, game types being ruined by operators destroying them. I'm sure we've seen some games go that direction.
Right.
So there's just like, there are all of these things that you kind of have to account for, with maybe the biggest one being that poker is very direct in that it takes money to make money. If you do not have a bankroll, you are not going to be able to make as much money. And so part of playing for a living is building that bankroll and, you know, essentially putting yourself in a situation where 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you can play bigger games. You're more comfortably able to take risk and make more money. And that's part of the end goal of playing poker as a career, is that you're going to be playing, you know, stakes that you don't have to put in many hours to live. Now, I'm not saying that it needs to be everyone's goal to make as much money as possible, but it does need to be the goal of a professional poker player to make money playing poker. I don't see why that's unreasonable.
Of course, sure. Yeah, right. No, I understand, but I don't think this is necessarily unique to poker in that it's just operating capital. So it's a business and you need operating capital to pay employees or to buy merchandise. It's the same thing for poker. You need operating capital to run your business, right? And I think there is differences in that, you know, it's a competitive industry. So if you stay the same, like you said, you're going to earn less year over year, right? But I don't think that factors in. And I think it's sort of completely missing the point, which is like, yes, I understand the need to earn money, and it's a difficult profession to earn money, and it's going to get harder and harder over time to set yourself up for the future. But there's other factors in determining what is a good choice to do in your life, right? There's more than just money. There's more than just preparing for taxes or maximizing your financial EV. There's like self-actualization of like, what are you about? What do you want to do? What is your life about? Right? And those sort of things are important. Like they're not irrelevant. And there is a scenario where you're going to make $30,000 less a year, but you're going to pursue this path because it's important to you. And that sort of negates the premise of you need X amount of dollars because it's different for different people.
You're shifting the question though, because the question is, how much do you need to make to have a career, like essentially to play poker for a living, right? To make poker your career. The question is not how much money do you need to make or what stakes do you need to be playing to find fulfillment. Those are different, right? Like if you want to play poker for a living, you're going to have to do a lot of very responsible, disciplined things that you don't have to do in traditional jobs. You're going to have to set up your own retirement accounts. You're going to have your own health insurance. You're going to have to spend money on these things that are expensive in America. Like
this is very American, by the way, which I find ironic in that we're talking about the relativity of your statements and you're giving me American reasons as to how to play poker when I'm a Canadian.
I know you're a Canadian. You know? I know you're a Canadian, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume that being an American applies to more poker players than being a Canadian. It's probably a safe bet.
Yeah,
right.
You guys have the edge in population. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. No, that was. But anyway, I guess my main point is like when you're going to 2+2, because the thread you found was on 2+2, right?
Yeah, some old threads like from back in the day, you know, back in the heyday, the glory days.
You're going onto an American forum amongst primarily Americans discussing how much money you need to make for a living, and then say, oh, in rural Canada, you don't need that. Like, I mean,
it's such an American assumption to assume that it's primarily Americans that you're speaking to. It's a very global site, right? And like when you compose tweets, it's not just to Americans. Like it's hitting like tens of thousands of people that don't live in America, that don't have to pay for their healthcare, and therefore like that recommendation isn't relevant to them. So I think there's two things here. Like the most important thing is that the income you're going to need to be responsible in your life to realize your goals is relative. So like 100,000 might be correct in the Bay Area of California, given sort of what's important to you in your life, which is probably security around your health and like, spending for your future. It's going to be very different in Romania, right?
Yeah.
So like
obviously. But again, the currency they're using in this discussion is U.S. dollars on a American-founded forum. So like we have to at least like you can't just be like, right, but what if you're Romanian? Like, okay, well if you're Romanian, then it's different. It is different.
Well then, but why do you phrase your comments as this is the advice for all of you when a bunch of those people don't fall into your metric? That's like what really frustrates me when I see you respond to these things, is that it's very specific, and I would argue your 100,000 doesn't apply to the mass majority of people that are reading your tweet.
Well, so we're getting a little bit more specific into like the demographics of my audience and things like that.
Right.
I think like typically, as I'm sure you have similar numbers to this. Like I'm the biggest portion of my audience is American. And then after that, it's Canada, UK, Australia, Germany. It's all first world countries. So we're really looking at first world countries specifically here. I mean, that's probably over 95% of my audience. And then sort of within that, we're also looking at the category of people who are playing for a living. So we're going to be looking at the primary places that people live and play poker, which are California, Las Vegas, Florida, at least within the U.S. There's a lot of places, people in those areas. Within Canada, we're probably looking at like Toronto, Vancouver. We're probably looking at cities like that. Within the U.K., we're very likely looking at places like London. You have to think about like what cities are people living in and playing for a living, right? You can't just be like, yes, it is possible to live in remote places and play for a living, but a large portion of them will either be playing at live poker, where they have to live in these major metropolitan areas, or they do that some portion at the time, or they have to travel to play, right? Like if you want to play the World Series of Poker, you have to come to Vegas. So I guess like I'm kind of looking at it from a more practical standpoint of like, where is the audience based? Where will they be playing for a living in terms of location? What does that look like? And so I'm trying to think of like common examples that exist given those parameters. There's also like, for the record, I didn't say specifically you have to make 100K to be able to play poker for a living. I didn't say that. I just think that it's a reasonable benchmark is my argument. If you can certainly find ways to especially if you live in a country where you're not taxed on gambling winnings, you can definitely find ways to do it for a cheaper, at a lower, a lower price point. But like when I think about like kind of the way that the math breaks down, I took like a sample, like what $100,000 actually looks like if you live in somewhere like California. It's going to be like $100,000 income, 23,000 goes to taxes. We have 77. As a poker player, you need to be putting money towards your bankroll. That's an important part of growing as a poker player. I think we can both agree on that. So let's just say that we're putting like a fourth of the money that we have left towards our bankroll. We're left with $57,000. And when you break down like what that looks like, it's like something like $4,800 a month or so. That is not a ton of money for someone that needs to be doing a lot of things. They need to be paying for where they live. They need to be paying for all of their food. They need to be paying for any business expenses they might incur. They need to be paying for travel to be able to play events. They need to be able to put money, save money for the future for their retirement. They need to be paying for all of their insurance. They need to be paying for the health insurance. What if something goes wrong? What if their car breaks? What if they need an attorney for something? What if so there's like some issue in their family and they can't work for a while? Like there's like so many things that we have to account for, and we're doing it out of 4,800, which is not a small number. I'm not saying that's like you can't live off that. You definitely can. But my point is, how much lower in major metropolitan areas as a professional poker player can you really go? Can you get down to 3,000? Very unlikely you're going to be able to do that in a place like California. Certainly you can't do that and be able to afford to save even $1 for your future. It's just not going to be very feasible. So we have to think about, like, practically speaking, what does it look like for most people? And that's kind of where I'm basing my breakdown around.
Right. So I think, like, if I'm to look at your situation and even to look at my situation of what my goals are in poker and what I'm striving to achieve of, like, long-term financial health, like, all these things are just bullet point, the standard bullet points for what you should be doing. Emergency fund, investing for your future, your retirement, your healthcare, although I have that covered up here. But I mean, like, these are basic, right? But then you look at that $4,800 figure after tax, and that puts you in such an elite point of the population. Like, there's such a small percentage of the world that has that much disposable income. So it comes across to me, being in a privileged position such as yourself, where I don't have to worry about those things in the short term, but it's just like so much of our audience is going to hear that and be like, I don't have 4,800 disposable dollars, and I am living my most plus EV life, working the best possible job I could work. Right? Like so why does that make poker on a pedestal of, I shouldn't try with poker? Poker, you need all of this extra money, but in this career, you don't.
You don't, yeah, because you don't need it. Because most people that are considering career options at sort of like low to mid or even above average but not high salary type careers, there's no risk. Like, that's a big difference. We're talking about gambling as a career. That should not be treated the same as, you have like a specific skill set where people will always hire you. That's not the case here. Like it is up on a pedestal in that it is much riskier. It's not for everyone. In fact, I believe in my heart that 99% of the world could never be a professional poker player when you think about all of the things you have to have together. You have to be great at strategy. You have to be great at studying. You have to be great at money management. You have to be great at so many different things. And if one of those things is wrong, your career is not going to get off the ground or you're going to fail. So it is different. And that's like, that's just the reality of the situation. It comes to being self-employed. It comes with careers that you have to risk capital very frequently, and you can lose it through extended periods of time. It's gonna come with careers like that. Like, this is not the same as I'm trying to think of like a good like middle of the road career. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but like, sure, an accountant. Although accountants probably do pretty well, I would say it's probably above average. So, but like, if you're an accountant, guess what? In 30 years, people are going to be doing taxes, right? That's not going anywhere. So, and your skill set's is not something that in 2 years you're behind the accounting curve now. Like, it's not going to be like that. You learn these basic things, and it's going to be with you for forever. So, I think that, I guess, like, again, I'm coming from a practical, like, what is a responsible amount of money to go professional in poker with? And that's
relative, bro. That is relative.
Sure, it's relative.
A responsible amount of money is relative. So when you tweet it out to all of your followers on Twitter, over 100,000, you have to understand that relative figure is not going to apply to the mass majority of people that are reading your tweet. And it comes across to me as just like, why is he telling everyone they need 100,000? That's ridiculous. This guy probably needs 30,000.
To play poker professionally in major metropolitan areas, you do need to be making close to that for a long-term successful career in poker. I'm shooting it straight, bro. I'm not holding hands
your goals
out here.
are X, Y, and Z.
No.
Right, which are Doug Polk's goals in these situations, right?
No, that's not true.
There's going to be differing variables in terms of how much healthcare security you need in your life. Some people are going to need this amount of coverage because they need that security in their life, and some people are going to be a little bit more risky and invest less in their healthcare insurance in the U.S. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. But
I've had a good conversation with Bill Perkins about this. You can't, at the end of your life, there's just going to be some things you can't pay for, where it's like $6 million a year, and you shouldn't be saving and getting yourself health insurance for $6 million a year of coverage. You're just going to die in a year. Like, you take that risk.
Right,
so
for sure.
That's an example of healthcare coverage being relative to your goals of what's important to you, how secure do you want to be, right?
Totally true, but I also think that most people are going to want to have healthcare, especially if they can't afford the risk that they take on for like, dude, I don't think you understand how bad some of the healthcare stuff in the US is. It is so abysmal. Like, plans, even the most basic plans, are several $100s a month. And even with that, your deductible, like, I have the most basic health insurance, and I'm still paying like $400 a month. And it's still like, if I go to the hospital for something, I went for something like a year ago or so, and I got billed $10,000. You know what I'm saying? Like this this is like a real thing in America. So, like, I'm not saying that you have to have health insurance. I think it is a more plus EV option to not have it. But most people, they have families, or they have like other people that rely on them, and they can't just take the risk of them just like YOLO, just gonna fucking die, and then like they leave their family. Like, most people can't do that or aren't gonna do that. So like, my tweet was not, every single person, no matter what your situation is, need to be making $100K a year or you cannot play for a living. But what I am saying is, for most people, you do need to be making that, particularly in major metropolitan areas. Also, I think, you know what, Jamie? This is what I think. I think most people should not try and go pro. That's a fundamental difference, I think, here. I think you're embracing the individual and stuff. I think that it is not a good idea for most people to try and become a professional poker player.
I think if their goals are similar to yours, I would agree with that. And I'm making an assumption here, and because I think a lot of people get into poker because they want to become rich. And I think that's a terrible idea. There's so much easier ways to get rich. Like, it takes a lot of time. So if you're getting into poker because you want to make a quick buck, you're making the wrong decision.
Totally.
But if you're getting into poker because you love playing strategy games and you love competing, brain against brain, mind against mind, and you want to compete for that money, then you're in the right spot and you should follow your dreams. Whether you're making $40,000 a year or whether you're making $100,000 a year, because you doing what you want to do in life is more important than all of this other thing of like being able to set yourself up for X amount of financial future. Like, it's worth taking that risk.
Yeah, I guess like the core element of this is, because I know the thread you're talking about. I actually remember reading that thread way back in the day. So it's funny just to have this conversation break out about it, like, I don't know, a decade later or something.
Yeah.
It's a very old thread. But I guess like the real core essence of that thread is like, sort of, when should I debate going pro in poker and leaving like my other career, my other job, the other thing that I have going for myself. And I think the answer needs to be a much higher figure than a traditional job because of the risks associated with it. And because,
agree.
Right.
We
Okay.
agree.
So
Yeah.
like, and you keep saying like over and over again, like, your goals. Like, I'm not talking about my goals. My goals are nowhere near this. Like, these are not even close to where
Right.
my goals are.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's funny that you keep phrasing it like that, because I'm not talking about my goals. I'm talking about like what your goals on average as a professional poker player, what they should be. I'm talking about the average professional poker player's goals should be about $100,000 a year. That should be something you strive for.
I'm arguing your assumption that that's people's goals is so far off base. Like, we're talking Bill Gates on Ellen here, guessing the price of toothpaste tubes. Like, oh, that's $37. Like, man, this is a testament to your success in life. You've crushed it. But like, people are not on the same level of like, here's what I need to feel secure and to feel safe and to live a successful life. Like, it's just not close to me. And that's my main tipping point here. I agree. You need more money. It's riskier, but like, 100,000 is not the benchmark for the majority of people.
All right. So I will say this. If you're fine with taking a lot of risk in your personal life and doing something that could completely backfire and leave you in a horrible situation, I think your approach makes some sense, right? Because if you're willing to put it all on the line, and like, if you fail, whatevs, man, you're in debt gambling, that's fine.
Well, where'd you get in debt? I didn't say go in debt to gamble, bro. I didn't say that.
Well, what are you going to do when you have no money? Are you going
to go back to school? Get a dead-end job and go back to school. You've seen rounders, right? Drive the truck around and get your life started again.
Rounders.
Like, what is the risk here, Doug? What is the risk, right? Like, you fail, you lose some years, and then you go on and do whatever you're going to do. To me, that's the thing that doesn't make sense of like, you're not resetting to dead. You're not dying. You're not going 100,000 in debt. You're taking some sort of a shot.
Yeah, but you do lose something, because in your example here, or this example, we're talking about people that are pursuing careers. They're not just like all 18-year-old kids or however old you were when you decided who live with their parents and like they can just really just like take the shot and then you move on. We're talking about people that already have careers, already have jobs, who are already, and they're playing poker on the side and debating whether they should become a professional poker player. So you do stand to lose a lot. You stand to lose the money that you've already saved. You stand to lose the time towards your career and your advancement. I think a lot of people's, families, or like, good luck if you have a wife being like, honey, look, we're putting it all on the line. I really think I'm great with pocket kings. Good luck with that.
It's relative. We're not only talking about those people, by the way, of just people that have careers and wives and mortgages and kids. Like, we're not coming up with the most insane scenario where you need the most financial security. We're also talking about your average Joe Schmo that works at Tesco down the block that's making $15,000 and thinks he might want to give it a go. Like, it applies to both.
How old do you think the average poker player is?
Oh, it's getting older. We both have YouTube demographics. Like,
I know
unfortunately,
you do.
it's like
That's why
28. You know, like
Oh,
unfortunately, it's getting up there.
I think it's actually higher than that. I think mine's like early 30s or like mid 30s. It's pretty old. And what age do you think most people get married at or have kids at or
Like 30.
okay, so
30 for women, and then for men like 33, 34 probably.
so it's pretty reasonable to assume that like half-ish of the audience are people that are married or have kids.
Yes, but they're not the same ones that are asking if they should go pro.
How do you know that? Now you're making assumptions.
I am making an assumption, but I think it's a reasonable assumption that on average it's going to skew towards people that don't have roots in a career or roots in a wife or fiance or whatever.
Here's my take. I think that you feel offended because your career did not start with that, right? It started with a different path. And so you feel that you need to stick up for people that want to go on a different path. But your path is not an option for most people. Most people can't, and you tweeted this, so I'm sure it's fine to say, but most people can't afford or have the opportunity to just take a shot in poker for, 1, 2, 3 years, however many years it was, living at your mom's while they pay for everything while you try and build your bankroll. Most people don't have that luxury, right? And so I'm coming at this more from like an angle of people that have to be self-sufficient immediately. When should they go pro? When and I think that's kind of more of the like what the thread was about as well. When should self-sufficient people or people who need to be self-sufficient, at what point should they go pro, and what's a reasonable amount of money for them to be making?
Right. Yeah, so I think just to loop back a little bit on my situation to give context. So I started playing poker at 18. I quit my job when I had a $700 bankroll, lived at home, didn't have to pay for any food, didn't pay for any rent. My parents paid my cell phone bill embarrassingly late. Like, they stopped it like 2 years ago, bro. Like, I've been living cell phone free for life, man. So that was like my safety net. And I understand that's not a privilege that everyone has. So I was able to go to school and sort of just like, I don't know, whatever, go to school 3 days a week, skip a bunch of classes, try and pass, and then play poker on the side. So basically, like, I was playing poker full time. That was my only source of income. I made probably on average $15K a year. And like, that's clearly not sustainable for the mass majority of the world to live off $15K a year being a poker professional. But I had that safety net. And that's like a privilege, and I totally understand that that's not possible for most people. But I think there is differing scenarios that are going to occur here, and it doesn't have to have a threshold of like, here's when you're a legitimate professional, right? I think that idea is ridiculous. So I'm not personally offended. Like, I've done okay in my career through a very unconventional path. And like, I'm not fragile about that. Like, I'm okay with what I've done. I'm proud of what I've done. Right. And it's
for sure
something that people tilt about a lot,
No. I mean, what you've done is great. Like, I think like building an audience and kind of being one of the first guys that was really on that sort of like wave. I think that was a great decision, and you've done well building that. I don't think that it has to be one size fit all, but your career was more based around really content than it was you playing poker, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, if you had been straight just playing poker, you wouldn't be where you are today, or at least it seems unlikely to me you'd be where you are today. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I think, time is obviously a big factor. So I think, I have some of the skill sets that would allow me to be successful in just purely poker. But like, my time investment would have gone all towards studying and playing as opposed to creating content, which you know very well, like how much of a time sink that is.
Could have gone, actually, in retrospect, maybe it would have gone better. Interesting.
So
that's a good point.
Like, I think really what we're taking issue with here is your statements to me. I agree with a lot of them for a specific subset of people, and I think they make sense. But I'm just taking issue with you putting them out into the world as if they describe even like a small percentage of the people reading them, because it has so much variability.
For starters, you started this thread. I didn't put this out into the world. I responded to your thread.
Right.
So let's just a little bit of quantifying that. And then second off, I also didn't say that in my responses it has to be everyone. If you live in places with especially low cost of living and you don't have to pay tax on your income, it can be a much lower number. So I totally agree with that. But I'm talking about, like, practically speaking, professional poker players who are living in like areas that are going to be common for these people to live in that have a lot of poker, it just isn't realistic for you to say to people that want to play professionally, like, just like just live somewhere where you don't have to spend any money every month and like build up your bankroll. Like, that's not realistic. Like, most people aren't in that situation. Like, the majority of people have to pay things month to month, and there are direct trade-offs, or there are direct trade-offs on choosing to play poker over doing other career paths. So yeah, that's
know what this reminds me of, Doug? It's really tilting. Full Tilt Poker Academy. Remember those videos that you could watch on Full Tilt where you would complete the challenges and like they would give you something?
Yeah, kind of.
Rules, like the rules they'd give you of if you have 10 big blinds, you can only shove or fold, right? Like, this is a very overarching, like, here's a decent rule for you, but then when you get more into the game, there's nuance, and that's really what we're taking issue with here. So I think, like, it's a reasonable rule, but it's tilting me that for a lot of people, it just doesn't.
So like, would you say that you think that it's, like, not a good basic guideline for how much money you should be making to be a professional poker player? Because I really do think it is.
I think it's too high. For most people,
what's your number then? Because you have a number, obviously, right?
Right.
So then,
it depends on so many things, Doug. Like, it really depends on what is your goal in life. What are you trying to do?
Yeah,
right?
dude,
like,
we're all
that's
like, beautiful, man. We're all beautiful, but like, what's the number, right? Like, there's a rough guideline. You're not even.
Is your goal money, or is your goal like success? Right? In poker, are you trying to become really good at poker, or are you trying to make the most money? Just give me one of those, and then we can work with it.
Be similar, but let's just say if someone asked you, Jamie, I'm considering becoming a professional poker player. What is a good amount of money for me to be making a year so that I can play poker as a long-term career? What would you tell that person?
I would start by asking them some questions. So the first question I'd
ask. If you had to pick a number, come on here. That's the main thing.
Bro, I'm not going to throw out a loosey-goosey number. I'd be giving bad advice. I don't want to give bad advice. I'd ask a question. I'm a Twitch streamer. You got to create conversation, Doug. You know it. So I would ask them, what do you want to do with poker? Do you want to make money, or do you want to be the best? And if they said, I want to make money, I would be like, well, you need a shit ton then, because it's really hard to make money in poker. You have to be really good. So I would start with like, I would get rich first and then figure it out and then go on with your career path. So more than 100,000 if your goal is just purely money. Right? But then I'd also ask, what's your dependence in life? Like, do you have a mortgage? Do you have kids? Like, are you 18 and you can go to school next year? Or is it like you're 35, you're in a stable career? Those are very different answers.
Sure, totally.
So like, it would range anywhere from like 20,000 for a college kid living at home. Like, give it a shot, man. You have no risk. Like, follow your dreams. To a guy with a mortgage and 3 kids and a wife, like, you should probably have 200K.
Give it a shot. Follow your dreams is not playing poker professionally. That's not. These are different things. Like, saying to someone like, okay, just do this risky thing and try and live your dream does not make it a career. It doesn't. It doesn't make it a career.
I see. So this is getting to the definition of what is being a poker professional and what isn't. And I think we have a difference of opinion on this. And we come from very different spectrums.
Let me ask you this question. By the way, I think it was very unfair you try to dodge the question about how much should someone be making a year, because there is an average of all your answers, and that's what
I'll give an average of 75,000.
Okay, so that's not that crazy then, right? If I'm saying,
but I would never give that answer, but I'll give you an average.
Oh, okay,
right?
Okay.
That's
sure.
the average, but it's not a good answer.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate that. And I just got sidetracked here with what I was we were just talking about
professional poker. What's a professional poker player?
Oh, let me ask you this question. If somebody is a losing poker player, can they be a professional poker player?
So this is interesting. I would definitely argue yes.
Okay.
And here's what's lost, I think, in the conversation is there's a difference in stakes, right? There's nuance in terms of the competition you're playing. So let's take, for example, some low-hanging fruit, because he plays the best of the best all the time, would be Gus Hansen, right? Gus Hansen was a guy that really struggled at the highest stakes and lost money. But if Gus Hansen played, $100 tournament, he would mop the floor of a lot of the opponents, But he was always playing the very best. He was always playing the very best,
sure.
Right? So he was losing at those stakes, and he would have income from other things. But so to me, it would be really weird to not call Gus a professional poker player for that
Really?
reason.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's almost the exact example of someone who's not a professional poker player. Somebody who likes playing poker for fun part-time while they make money in other areas. That's my exact definition of not a professional poker player.
So I don't really know where Gus makes his money in general,
I think
but
it's
like,
backgammon.
let's take someone like me, for example, right? So like, we can use me as an example. I play in a lot of games where like they're very difficult, right? Like I know I'm playing against opponents that are studying every day, all day, and they have an edge on me. But I play in a tough game because it's fun and it's entertaining for my channel. So like I know going in that I might lose 5% ROI in this tournament, but that's okay because I'm gaining experience and it's good for my show and it's interesting, right? So like for me, all of my income comes from poker pursuits. You know, like I make $50 a month on my vlog channel. Other than that, it's all from poker, right? So would that dictate me as not a professional poker player because I'm making an educated choice to playing games that are tougher?
Well, in that scenario, it's a very different example because you are making money from playing that tournament. It's just not money through the action of the play in the tournament itself. It's through supplementary play surrounding that. So let me give you an example. If Gus Hansen losing $10 million or $15 million online or whatever he lost was his way of getting into games that were so good that he was crushing for 50 million, then yes, that would be a professional poker player.
Boom. We don't know that.
But the idea that someone can play poker and lose money as a part-time gig while they make money elsewhere, that is not a professional poker player. Professional poker players make their living through poker. That's I mean, or they at bare minimum make money through poker.
Make money through poker. I'm with you. Like, I don't think you can exclusively lose money through all encompassing aspects of poker and like a poker career, whether that be a public career, whether that be investing to get into a bigger game in the future. You know,
I love that you're fully on board with that example. Like, oh,
I think that's great.
That's exactly what Gus did. Definitely did
good.
that.
So yeah, then I think we agree. But I also think there's an aspect of what are you spending your time on as well? Because I think, you know, let's take that college kid, right? And he wants to become a full-time poker player, and he's 19 years old. He takes a shot, and he spends all of his time studying and learning tournaments, okay? And let's say that like he's breaking even or slightly losing in the level that he's playing of $10, okay? Now, he could drop down to $5 and make a little bit of money, but he's not doing that because he wants to gain experience or whatever reason. So we can always move down and make money. If you have some level of poker knowledge, you can always drop down to where you can earn something. It just might not be enough to sustain for you.
You know what?
So many people can become profitable poker players.
You know, here's
but they
the thing,
don't.
man. Here and honestly, Jamie, I think this is like a problem with society as a whole right now.
Oh no.
We're in the business of participation trophies. You showed up, that's an A for effort, my friend. You're on your way to 8th place again. Like, that's the kind of attitude that we have. And honestly, I think that it's ridiculous that we accept such a low standard for people trying to do something for a career. If you're going to try and do something in life, whatever you're passionate about, try to be great at it. Give it your all. Take a swing. And if you fail, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But don't call yourself a professional when you're losing money doing something.
Doug, you should try sucking at something and being on the other side of this. All right? If you weren't great at everything you did, Doug, maybe that you would understand what it feels like to be on the bottom half, okay?
I spend probably 4 to 6 hours a day playing or studying Counter-Strike, okay?
Right.
I do that every day. I really enjoy it. I do it way more than anything else that I do. Am I a professional Counter-Strike player?
No.
Why?
Because you don't do anything to earn money in Counter-Strike.
Okay, but what if I'm learning so that I can eventually make money?
I think you have to start to earn at least something. Enter some tournaments where you have something at risk.
I'm in some tournaments.
To win.
I'm in some tournaments.
To win something.
Yeah, there's prize pools, yeah.
So then I think it would come down to you of like, do you consider yourself a Counter-Strike player of like, this is your now full-time pursuit?
I do it every day for way more than I do anything else.
But you don't think you're a professional Counter-Strike player?
I'm asking you, am I?
Well, I would ask you.
It's my passion. I'm doing it all. I'm doing it. I'm honestly doing a very sad amount.
What are your
It's
aspirations
really-
then? What are you trying to work towards?
I want to be the
Counter-Strike?
best, man. I want to be as good as I can possibly be. I don't
Then I
know
would
how
say-
far I can go.
Then I would say you're a Counter-Strike pro.
I do not think I'm a Counter-Strike pro.
Fair enough.
You know what
I
I'm
mean,
saying?
it's a little bit different when there's leagues too. It's different when you're in
Right.
sports and there's like competitive leagues that are clear differentiations between pro and not pro.
Well, the real differentiation is that I'm not making money playing Counter-Strike. That's what defines a professional.
But here's what's silly to me, right? Okay, let's. This really frustrates me because it applies to me often. It's because I'm hurt, Doug. It really is the reason. Okay,
I gotcha.
My Twitch chat. So let's take for example one guy that you love to talk to about a bunch, Daniel Negreanu. Okay, let's take Daniel Negreanu. And let's throw him in 500, 1,000 online against the best heads-up no-limit player in the world. He's a losing player. Now let's say that Daniel Negreanu plays that all the time, frequently, for whatever reason. Is he then not a professional poker player?
Well, in the Negreanu case, I think he's a professional poker player either way because he, at least until recently, has always been paid to play poker. But if he decides he's just going to play occasionally part-time now and lose money on the side, no, he is not a professional poker player.
I just think what's lost in the nuance of this conversation is a lot of people are willing to lose short-term money for either experience or entertainment, and that doesn't make them bad, right?
No, it doesn't make them bad people. It makes them not professionals. This is I guess the big difference. To me, a professional is someone who has standards of like sort of what they need to achieve to be able to live, to be able to have a successful career. That is a professional. If you want to just take a swing, you can do that. People are more than welcome to take a swing. But like, I can't just play Counter-Strike 8 hours a day and call myself a Counter-Strike professional. That's craziness. You have to actually start to have you have to actually start to achieve something to be able to call yourself a professional in an arena. There's a difference.
I'd say aspirations and progress, right? I would say goals and progress towards those goals, and then the amount of time that you put in. Like if you sum those things up, that would describe a profession, I think.
I think
like,
it comes
for
down
example,
to income. I think it comes down to income.
See, but then it's subject to relativity, right? It's subject to the relative nature of what you're living in, which is going to be different for different people. Which means you can't tell me what a pro is, and I can't tell you what a pro is because it's different for different people.
Sure. I totally, and I've agreed to this before. I agreed with this before, which is if someone lives in an area with very low cost of living, doesn't pay taxes, and they make $30K a year, and they're able to live, save, build their bankroll, they are 100% a poker professional, 100% without doubt. And I've admitted that too, like online. Like it doesn't apply to everyone, but if someone spends their year losing $50,000 a year but could be winning, but they just choose not to, they are not a poker professional. Those are different. You have to be making income. I think that's like almost, I mean, I don't know what the definition of profession is, but I have to imagine it includes earning income.
There's a line there because I think things can be justified as investments, right? In certain circumstances, but I think there's a line, right? There's a level between just being a delusional sort of person that's being a degenerate,
Sure,
and then also investing in your future success,
totally,
through playing. So
yeah.
So we agree there's a line. I just don't think you can set the line. I don't think I can set the line. I don't think it's for anyone to set the line.
Look, like at the end of the day, after this conversation is done, if someone says, Doug, how much money should I make a year to pursue a full-time career playing poker? I would tell them $100,000 a year is a good baseline. I would. And like, if there are factors that make it much lower for you, that's fine. And I could see a lot of factors where it's much higher than that, where you need to be making more than that. That's fine too. But as like a good rule of thumb, something in that vicinity makes the most sense for the most people that this is going to apply to.
So can I just ask you this? Because it's low-hanging fruit. It's low-hanging fruit, right? Like, how many people that are poker professionals today or all time had $100,000 when they went pro and or had expectation of earning $100,000 when they turned pro? Because I know you didn't, and I know I didn't, and I don't know a single person that did. Maybe one. Maria Konnikova, the Stars pro that was like a writer for the New York Times and stuff. Maybe her. I don't know her situation, but it's so rare. I've almost never seen it.
I went pro with the expectations of making 100,000 a year. Now, I didn't have anything close to that.
But what about when you were earning 50K a year? Were you not a pro yet?
If I
In
was
expectation.
To be honest with you, I was not a pro when I first started playing full time. I wasn't. I lived with my grandma. Is that a pro? No, it's not a pro.
So where was the line in your mind, Doug, as to like, oh, expectation ticked over the six-figure mark, boom.
No, it's not anything to do with the amount of income you're earning as to what determines if you're a pro. It's, are you fully self-sufficient from your career? That's a pro. So, I think realistically, like, until I was making that ballpark, I wasn't a pro.
I can get more on board on that side of like the self-sufficiency. I think there's relativeness in that too, in that like some people have more privileges than others, and that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, like we could live at home, right? Some people can't live at home. How does that affect the difference of like who's a pro and who isn't a pro, right?
Well, I live in a home I bought, so
some people have less expenses, right? So it costs less to do it.
Sure, but I live in a home I bought with money I made from poker. That's a pretty...
Yeah. No, like I understand you were a pro.
Living here is kind
player.
of included in the me being a pro conversation. You can't be like separate from that. That's a privilege. Like that's what I made through my career that I had. You know.
Yes, I understand.
Privileges
I think
are
like,
things that you're born into.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Right, like you could move from California to like Russia, and you could be a pro with much less skill set, but you're the same human being. So there's some weirdness there in terms of like circumstance and privilege and all that. But I think we're relatively close on that, and we beat this to death. So I think
let's talk about the second subject.
Okay.
Second subject I think is pretty interesting as well. So my take is that I don't think streaming as a career is a sustainable career. I don't think it's sustainable. And then there was a clip that I tweeted where I talked about it a bit. And really, like, when I say I don't think streaming is sustainable, was talking about it from the sort of the perspective of streaming as a career. And I'm really more specifically talking about streaming poker as a career, because I think that there is a huge difference that streamers in other games don't really understand about poker, which is, you're playing a game for money. And so if you start to play bad, you lose money because of that. And so you have to always have mental clarity to be making consistently good decisions, which is extremely hard. I have like unbelievable amounts of respect for people that can consistently stream poker and also play poker well. That's such a hard thing to do.
And thanks, Doug. I appreciate that, man.
You're welcome.
That's so kind
You're
of
welcome.
You, dude. That's awesome.
and then I also think that the dynamic of it has to be delayed creates this like kind of like awkward dynamic with the audience that's sort of hard to overcome as well. And then finally, because the most popular format is tournaments by far, it's not even remotely close. You have to play those as a game type, and most of the tournaments that are popular for people to watch are going to last hours. So you have to be consistently good with your decision making for hours. You have to be, to succeed in the platform, you really need to be streaming somewhat often. And then on top of it, you have to be trying to engage with an audience that's on a delay while you're trying to win money. It's hard to. It's honestly like, in terms of just the package of being able to do all of those things well, is one of the most difficult careers I can think of, in terms of you have to just be, like, you're on camera, so you can't do things that are unsavory. You need to make sure that you're putting your best self forward. And then you need to interact with people while playing a very competitive, difficult strategy game. In terms of how tough that is to do, it's one of the hardest jobs I can think of. And so when I look at streaming as a sustainable career, and we're kind of going back into a conversation that we had before with like what benchmarks do we need to live, but let's just say something in the vicinity of making $50,000 to $100,000 a year streaming. I don't think that that's a sustainable long-term career. And my examples are, look at sort of like the Twitch landscape, look at like a lot of the people that were the bigger streamers before, and kind of look what happened with them. Like I think of Somerville. Obviously, he's like the OG guy that built like the biggest audience out of the gate. I don't know if you watch any of the streams down the stretch. I just tuned in for a little bit just to kind of see what he looked like. And I feel like he was really miserable in some of those like final streams down the stretch, you could really see the sort of despair. I know for me personally, it was grueling. I had a very hard time like getting myself to do it. When I realized I had not finished the bankroll challenge, I'd put it off for a year and a half, and I realized that I had to do it. I felt horrible, and I did it, and I got it done. And oh boy, was that amazing! But it was way too much for me. And I think like some of the other bigger guys, like I think Tonka has done less streaming lately. You know, I'm actually not as much in the scene nowadays, so I don't exactly know who the bigger streams are. I know Lex has said, I think, that he's going to be doing a little less streaming, or he plans on a little more focus on his health, was my understanding. So anyway, I guess like my main takeaway or my main comment on this this topic is I just don't think streaming poker is a long-term sustainable career.
Yeah, so I think the things you say about it being difficult for longevity, I think definitely hold true. You know, we've had Jason Somerville, we've had Tonka P, we've had yourself, and now Lex, and then me for like very brief periods as the biggest streamer on the platform. And, you know, you look at that list, there's sort of 2 that are actively streaming right now. You know, and Lex started like 2 years after Somerville or something. So it's like, it appears that there's a short shelf life for those reasons that you mentioned. Like you need to put in 40+ hour weeks. It's really important to be the first streamer out of the day, especially on a Sunday. So you need to stream like 12 hours. You know, it's just like that's really difficult to do over a sustained period of time. But that's all playing a game at number 1. And I think I can provide some context here because very rarely have I been the biggest streamer on Twitch Poker. I've often been number 2, number 3, number 4 for like 5 years of my career now. Which allows me a little bit more freedom of not having to have a consistent schedule, of having to be there at the same time every day, not playing that rat race. But I have earned a sustainable living, you know, where I've made enough money not having to be on the hamster wheel, so to speak. So I think it's difficult, but I don't think it's a necessity to be successful in life.
Well, that's
in streaming, successful in streaming.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So sure, but you know, something that was a really good decision on your part. So I'm not saying that you were lucky for it to have happened to you because it was a choice that you made. But the fact that you got in at the start is extremely important. If someone tried to do what you have done over the course of the last, like your first year, you went ham, is my understanding. And then you kind of like went a little bit slower after that, right? If someone did your exact schedule of streaming, but had started a year let's say you did your exact same thing, but you started 1 year later, you would not be close to where you are today, in my opinion.
True. Yeah, there's less barriers of entry.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that plan isn't one that other people can emulate or do. That's just like a first in advantage. And Twitch is really big with that. If a new game comes out and someone immediately like gets towards the top of the directory at the start of a game, it gives them this like long-term boost in that game that will be an advantage permanently. So from that perspective, like it's a great strategy to do that, and that gives you an edge in that regard. But other people can't come in and do that same thing as you. They won't have the same success you had.
I think if they copy exactly what I did, of course they're going to have a smaller degree of success. I think they'll still have a lot of success. I think they could still make a meaningful amount of money and have a career, but it's harder. But everything gets harder. Poker gets harder every year. You know, it's like in 2011 complaining about poker being so hard. It's like, oh, just wait till 2019. You know, like it always gets harder. Everything does. So I mean that's a thing, right? But I think a lot of what the success is in Twitch in general, and definitely Twitch Poker as well, is networking. Like you take a look at someone like Arlie Shaban, for example, who's now signed with Stars. Like he started by being a Twitter superstar. Like every streamer knew Arlie Shaban because he would engage with everyone's content. He became a character of the whole listing. And then when he launched his stream, it's like all of us that at that time I was with PokerStars, no longer, we all knew him. So it's just like, oh yeah, we're looking for people to do stuff with. Oh, have you met Arlie? Right? And like all of a sudden he did this challenge and then he got signed and now he's like on their team and he streams on their central channel and his channel's growing. Like networking is so much of the game because you can just leapfrog. You get one host from another community. It's like you've just gained 40 long-term fans that were never going to find you before. Right? So that to me is the metric of success, and that is absolutely doable in today's day and age of just like making yourself available and providing value to people. So I think it's doable, man. I still encourage people to start streaming and pursue it if you're serious about it, man. Not to make a quick buck. Again, don't do things for money. It's not going to work.
So, I think that Arlie used a great strategy. I mean, I didn't stream that much when he was kind of coming up and stuff. When I did stream, he was there and he was like dropping some donations and like just getting some lulls in the mix. So it was a great strat. Will that consistently work for new people? Less. It'll work less because there's Arlie who did that. And now the next guy looks like he's copying Arlie and the next guy's copying him. And then like these strategies water down. And so essentially like, to get the similar results of people before or who came before you, you have to work harder, which is kind of baked into the platform. I know poker also gets harder over time, but at least in that, it's like it comes down to your understanding of poker and not just straight up like volume, which is going to be absolutely mandatory with something like Twitch. So there are still people that can kind of break the mold and become great at playing poker. Whereas like that's much less likely to happen in the streaming environment. Like I guess like the sustainability of streaming, I meant less so from like a how much money you're making perspective. Although I do think that people are probably making substantially less than what really should be considered appropriate for a career. But besides that, I think just like the actual physical sustainability of having to do what streamers do is just not something that people are going to be able to do for years. It's not. Right. There's not. Like, let me ask you, Jamie, do you see yourself streaming poker as much as you do today in 10 years?
No.
Right.
No, I think it's about a 10-year career shelf life for streaming.
If
for me.
you're okay for you. So what do you think the average shelf life will be?
I mean, realistically, about 5-6 years.
Do you think the average streamer is going to be? I think it's going to be.
Well, if they're a full-time streamer, I don't know. It's tough to say. I'm not trying to big myself up here, but like I think it's difficult and people burn out, for sure. So yeah, I think a lot of people will give up. Maybe that's too high. Let's say 4 years.
I think it's going to be a lot lower than that. I mean, if you manage to have a 10-year career streaming poker, that is a truly remarkable feat. I can't imagine like. Honestly, do you think there's going to be more than just you who streams poker for 10 years? I think it could be just you.
I wouldn't be surprised if Lex did as well, particularly. I could see Lex and maybe Spraggy too, because Lex seems to be downscaling in a very sustainable way for his life, where he is taking time off when he needs time off, and he's big enough where he has enough scale where he doesn't have to hammer streams every single day to be successful. So he has a great level of sustainability, I think, for his channel. But I think it's pretty rare. Yeah.
How many people streamed year one you streamed? Or sorry, let me rephrase that. What year did you first start streaming?
Almost 5 years ago. Like two weeks from now, 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just me and Jason. Yeah, there's no one sort of that was streaming at that time that's still around streaming, at least at any volume. Like some people had channels and they'll pop off streams once a month or something. But
what about the next year? Anyone from that era still online?
Spraggy was actually during the beginning, but he took like a year off. In the middle there, I think, or so. But not many.
You see what I'm saying? It falls off so sharply because of the difficulty, and.
But you do get some things out of this. It's different than poker in that you get skill sets in both games, and I think the skill sets are very, very valuable. But in streaming, you also gain connections and career opportunities, right? So like I think I could easily transfer into a lot of marketing companies or gaming companies or like Twitch itself from what I've done over the past 5 years with the skills that I've gained, or gaming companies of like, gambling companies. And that's through streaming and developing connections and learning what I've learned about marketing and storytelling, etc. So right. I think you gain that in streaming, and you can parlay into so many other avenues when you're done.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think like if you're using streaming, and for the record, I think there are definitely people who should stream. I think that it can absolutely make sense as a career as well. I think particularly when you come at it from a perspective of I'm using this as like a building block to kind of work into some other avenues down the road, I think that is a great choice.
What if you don't know, Doug? That's okay too, right?
It's
Yeah.
okay to not know.
What if you don't know?
For sure. You don't know. Dude, I don't know what I'm doing with my life right now. I'm playing Counter-Strike every day.
Listen, man, I think you're on the road to. I think you're already a professional. We've already established here. You're entering tournaments where you can min money. You're spending all your time on it. You have serious goals. You're a professional CS player, bro.
All right. So I guess it's time to start streaming, or.
I mean, I would give it a go. Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, I guess the main thing that I'm with streaming, my only real point is like people just take for granted how difficult it is and how much burnout there is. And like how trapped you feel when you're streaming on tournaments. Like I felt so trapped when, like, I remember this one day I think it was during like a scoop or a W coop or something, and I had just streamed the day before for 12 hours and I made day 2, and it was like I was like, this is just the worst thing that's ever happened to me, because like I was so run down. I was just like exhausted, and I had to come back for like a small stack day 2 and like grind for 5 more hours, and like there are other tournaments going. Should I play those? And I registered one and I already regretted it, and I'm sitting there trapped, a prisoner, and I just was like, I can't do this anymore, man. It's just too hard. It's so difficult to do. It really is. It's so difficult to do.
That is a feeling that happens. I remember playing the $8 rebuy. I talk about this with my brother Matt all the time, who's also a streamer, Matt Staples, and like we banter about this all the time. It's so great having a brother that's a streamer as well, because we can talk to each other about things like this. I played the $8 rebuy cubed like 5 years ago on Stars at the time, and it was a 9-hour tournament, and I busted everything early. But I had a rule at that time that if I had tables, I was streaming. I never shut down my stream until I was done all of my tournaments. So I one-tabled this tournament for 6 hours to victory, like on a Sunday, dude. The most painful thing, like you don't want to talk about strategy of other hands in the 8 rebuy. You just want to shut off your brain, and you can't. Yeah. You're not allowed with streaming.
Yeah, no, that's actually hilarious. There's like, it's like the streamer's curse. You always crush the hardest in your lowest stakes tournament. Always. If you got a stack early, it's in your smallest tournament like 9 out of 10 times.
It's just like 60 that. Left in this 11 deep stack. Like, all right, grab some coffee.
I mean, if you're playing deep stacks though, that seems like a leak.
Yeah.
What changes did you make? Like over the course of your career streaming, what changes did you make to allow yourself like to have more longevity doing it? And then also like, I feel like you have, I've said this about you before, I feel like you're one of the hardest working guys in poker. Like you've done your vlog, you've done obviously streaming, you've done a bunch of YouTube content, a lot of it is stream highlights, but you've just put out such a massive amount of content over the last 5 years. Like what do you do to prevent yourself from burning out and prevent yourself from kind of like ending up like a lot of the other guys have? Like what have been some of your keys to success? And you also, kind of a follow-up question on that. You said that you didn't have a rule at the time, or you had a rule where if there was one table, you were streaming it. What did you change with that as well to make it less burdensome?
So I just do Burnout. Like I'm not particularly good at self-care or being reasonable with my expectations on myself, or sort of, yeah. So I just burn out, I think one of the things that changed from year 1 to year 2, and it perhaps cost me money, but it gave me more flexibility, was diversifying into other platforms. So I was like pretty much just Twitch. And then I was like, okay, I should have a YouTube channel. I should consider vlogging. I should make more connections with my community, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And I haven't done an amazing job at that, but it's at least given me options of like other avenues of revenue or things that I can do if I need that choice. And that takes the pressure off having one platform and one show, because that's kind of scary. So you can just stream less, you feel less pressure to do it. Like I would be streaming right now, but we're having this conversation. So like I'm going to start later, and it's fine because it's great YouTube content. What's up, YouTube? So that's the thing. And then I think the changes over time with streaming, it wasn't really a conscious choice. You just start to feel a little bit less pressure, which is maybe like kind of a sad thing. If it loses its luster or appeal, it becomes a little bit less special as you do it more and more years. But it's just, I don't feel particularly bad if I'm having a rough day shutting down the stream, because I've been here 5 years and I plan to be here for another 5. So I got to look after myself, and that's the only way that we're going to make that happen. So that's important. Just the mindset I have. Yeah.
One thing that I found though, like, through my career streaming was my actual physical health, and I found this making YouTube as well. Like, without a question, went downhill. And so from like when I started 2015 to like kind of near the end of it, like I gained a considerable amount of weight. I was not working out. I was eating way worse. I found like if I streamed all day, I do not want to end I'm not ending this day with a piece of grilled chicken and some broccoli. We're just not doing that. You know, like that's just like it's been. I've come too far today to do that, and so like I found that I wasn't really able to kind of correct a lot of that stuff until I really just did a lot less.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
find
absolutely.
with that in terms of health? Like, how do you balance that?
Well, yeah, we've been through some fluctuations in the health game, for sure.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think I proved that it's possible to do well while streaming to lose a bunch of weight, because I did on the first bet. But then I also think like there wasn't necessarily a lot of longevity in my approach, which was very extreme. So I think the willpower lays off, and like becomes too much at some point where you need a little bit more of a release. And I assume that we're similar in that one of our releases is turning to like calories, right? As like a way to feel comfort. So rewiring that is difficult. And I think especially when you stream, you know, it's just decision fatigue. You make 5,000 poker decisions, and then you're also streaming, like you're just exhausted. So you don't have any willpower left in your brain. There's a lot of studies that actually go into you have a limited amount of willpower to utilize.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
if you have very stressful days, like you just don't have the power to sort of.
Decision fatigue is a very real thing. Like you're only going to get to make so many good decisions a day, which is why it's important to pick them well.
And then also environment too, which is something that I've definitely struggled with, of creating like an environment where you can't fail. I think that's got to be the most important metric. So just like mental health and then environment, which are, you know, difficult at times. You know, definitely something I've struggled with. So
I found like one big thing that I did to get healthier recently was like, you know, and it sucks that I even have to say this, but like I had to just tell my friends I'm not going to hang out with them a lot, because like I know like there are people that can go out to like a big dinner and like, oh, I'll get the grilled chicken and just sit here and like, oh, I'm so happy. Like I'm not one of those people. I can't do that. Like it takes a lot of willpower, and it takes like it really takes like, I don't know, man. Like I don't know how people do it, frankly. So I just removed myself from a lot of those situations. And so I think like if you put yourself into an environment where, you know, you can't fail, I think that's absolutely like one of the most essential things, because if you end up in bad spots constantly, you're going to fail. It's just like not, you know, if you're out at a nice restaurant every night eating dinner, you're going to fail. It's just a question of when.
I mean, well, so I think that's interesting because during the first bet where I lost 116 pounds in a year, I cooked like maybe 15 times. Like I didn't eat at home at all, really. I pretty much exclusively ate restaurant food for the full year.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But the thing was there was environmental pressure of like this amount of money for my brother Matt, $75,000 is huge. I can't lose this for him. Like I'll be okay, but like that would be a soul crushing defeat for him at this point in his career.
And he's your brother.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I couldn't lose. It wasn't an option. Also, you bet against us, which is one of your career best decisions, by the way. Congrats on that.
Cheers. I
So
sat out.
lose to you, Doug.
How bad am I? I sat out on the second bet. I was like, should I bet again? And I was like, I guess I'll sit this one out. Why?
You learned your lesson. I like it.
Why did I not bet again? Should have gone with my intuition. Damn it.
So, dude, I have to say, like, the amount of pressure, there's been nothing like that, because I had, like, thousands and thousands of people seeing what was going to happen. And to me, it was, like, a determination in my life of who am I to the world. You know, and that's a big way of looking at it and ridiculous. But in my mind, that's really how it was. Like, am I a success or am I a failure? Right? To my brother, to the people that are watching me, like, it was such an important thing. Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't have a choice to fail. Like, there was no choosing anything at a restaurant that wasn't chicken and vegetables. Like, it just wasn't going to happen, because I was fighting for, like, my own life in my brain. So that was, like, a situation where I could eat out every meal and it wasn't an issue because of that social pressure.
In that scenario, I guess it is very different. I've also like I also know what you're saying though, like how finding sustainability. I'm always fluctuating, like I'm always like either gaining weight or losing, and I have a hard time really finding like sort of that middle ground. And I think it's just because like if in order to find a middle ground, you really kind of have to be counting calories and like being like at roughly your calories. And that process makes you want to go under it, right? Because like if you're tracking every single thing, you're not like, I'm going to track and do all this work for nothing and break even. You tend to go under, you know what I'm saying? And then when you stop, you're like, we're eating good tonight, like whatever it is, And so it's like you have like all these really good days, and then you have these really bad days. And so like at least for me, I don't have like a ton of like break even days. And that just seems like a very difficult thing, a really difficult thing to maintain. I've been like focusing on this as like one of my main things over the last year and a half or so. And like trying to find that balance is difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, because I've spent a lot of my life trying to figure out what it is that has caused me to struggle with my weight my whole life. And I it kind of comes down to like an awareness. And when you're deploying awareness and like mental capacity to the problem consistently, but that is not like a natural way of living. The natural way is not putting any effort into it. So for whatever reason, it's a hurdle, or it takes willpower to deploy effort. So I don't know. Do you have that experience? Do you feel like that when you have an off day, you're just like, oh, I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
You just don't think about it.
I think like a lot of it just kind of comes up to like, how you ate and lived when you were younger, and like what sort of built in as like the natural processes for you and the way you operate and how you eat and how you look at food. And, like the way that I was raised, I was not really told that there was any correlation with what you ate and how fat you got, which is ridiculous, which is totally ridiculous. And you say it and it just sounds ridiculous saying that. But I really was not told that. Like it was like, food you use to like live, and then your weight, and it's like this magical, like they're two separate things. But the reality was like I just was always eating way too much food, and so I was like habitually overweight. I remember like in middle school, I remember in like seventh grade, I was the second fattest kid at my grade, and you're always knowing you're the second fattest because you're like yes, like I am not number one. Anyway, so like I always struggled with that stuff, and then I got older and I started to realize like, oh, the amount of food that I eat matters. And I honestly, like, I didn't even really know about calories, that like the impact they have, until like a year or two ago. And so like, yeah, like it is hard because you're like, in order to succeed in losing weight or even breaking even, you have to completely change like your internal, like the way that you would naturally operate in terms of diet to something different. And that requires thought, and it requires discipline, and it requires so much to accomplish that if you're not always working on it, you're going to, if you ever want to be like, I don't want to think about this, I have enough going on, I don't want to worry about this, you're going to gain weight. And so like, for me, like I was very fortunate in that I was able to kind of take a step back from everything I was doing. I stopped making a lot of videos. I was doing no streaming. I was just like, essentially managing my businesses and finances, and that was kind of it. And just really focused to kind of like fix things and get them back to a more reasonable level. But it was hard, and it takes time and effort, and I don't know like what the good balance is. Like where's the line where it's like, where's the line where it's like you can live a healthy life and make good decisions while you're not overthinking it. One of the things that I found helped me a lot was, dude, I eat the same thing for lunch every day. And I eat that same thing for dinner a bunch too. I have legitimately the exact same thing. Like I would say in the last year, I've eaten the same meal 400 times.
That's just like Jason Somerville too, man.
Same
Except
meal.
His was turkey burger and mac and cheese. That's insane. The consistency. I mean, you just hit home an interesting point, which is the correlation between poverty and obesity. I mean, you're in a position where you can obviously take a step back and focus on that. Like the less time you have, the less you're going to be able to focus on that problem,
100%.
Which is pretty interesting. But I think there's a little bit of a difference in that between me and you, although I was the second fattest in middle school as well.
Yeah.
We even raced against each other in gym class, bro. And I was like half a lap down, and I chugged the last lap, and I beat him. And I'm like, I'm still second fattest, man. The whole class was cheering like it was a true Rocky moment. It was amazing.
The imagery there is amazing.
I'm not even lying, dude. We both had mullets, you know, just from like middle Canada.
That's amazing.
It was, so I think one thing that's different for me is that I didn't come from a scenario where I didn't know sort of calories or macronutrients. Like I came up with that and I knew that. Where I developed a dependence in my life was I wanted to be a professional golfer. So I ate at the golf course a lot. Like I would spend all day at the golf course from age 10 until age 18 with the same sort of fervor as I do for poker. And often I would eat after my round. So food in my life became my success. It became the reward for having a good day, and it became the relief for having a bad day. So it was basically my coping mechanism for my failures and successes on the golf course. So for me, it's not a knowledge thing of I don't know what this is doing to my body. It's the emotional relief for like the pressure I put on myself in my career. So I think it's interesting how we hone on two different sort of perspectives here, but the same outcome of like difficulty maintaining it, you know?
Yeah. I think that there's also a lot of like societal factors and pressures at play. And just the fact that so many foods are even offered with how truly horrible they are for you. Because, you know, realistically, the worse, as food becomes less healthy, it becomes more tasty in a lot of ways, and it becomes more addictive. And the food industry really tries to capitalize on that by serving people meals that will make them addicted, and they'll come back for more. You know, like I'm really not a big blame the environment person. I'm really into personal responsibility, and like, you know, when things are going badly or you're in a tough spot, like, you know, sometimes it's not going to be fair in life, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't give it your best to get out of bad situations. And so you always have to take personal responsibility for that. But it doesn't also mean that these industries don't prey on people that either don't know or don't have the time to care, or, you know, it's tough seeing that. I really do think that I do think that obesity and just like, I think that there's really a health crisis here that people like to make about like other things. They like to make about like, you know, I think of Michelle Obama when she was like, you gotta get out there and move. And like, so kids all out there and moving. And it's like, no, they need to not eat sugar for breakfast. That's what they need to, you know what I'm saying? Like that, there's such a disconnect there that really I think that I don't know what the solution is, but at the current rate that we're going, it's going to be a real disaster in 10, 20, 30 years. You think about how bad the healthcare system is, at least here, now. Now imagine where it's going to be in 30 years with the way obesity rates are going, right? And everyone's like, oh, we need more money in the system. It's like, how about we work on people like preventive care? It's all like care that's like, there's a term for what is it? It's like after it's happened. It's like after bad things have happened, you get help, you get care, but we don't work on preventative measures,
right, yeah.
Which, you know, like let's actually I watched the Democratic debates the other day, and they're talking about like the health industry. Not one person is like, yeah, and let's try and work on everyone eating better. No,
because they're playing the game, Doug. They're playing the game.
I know they're playing the game.
You can't listen to what they're actually saying. They're trying
so
to get
ridiculous.
votes, dude. But absolutely, that's a preventative care would save the most people and save the system the most people. But it's not sexy. It's not going to win votes.
It's not sexy to be like, hey, eat less.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
but like as we've hit on here, you can't just tell people eat less. Like it's not going to be like guys shouting from the rafters like eat less and it's going to work. Like clearly there's a lot at play as to why people are making these choices and hurting themselves. But you know, I agree with you in that I fall on the libertarian to sort of left side of things a lot. So I struggle a little bit with this issue of should there be regulations in place when it comes to junk food and unhealthy food? And that is something that I struggle with. And if there was more regulations in place that hindered my personal freedom, I'd probably be in a better spot. But then again, is that fair for me to impose on society as a whole to sort of restrict some of these things like the soda ban in New York, which was, you know, several years ago, where you can't buy a big gulp soda in New York. Like that's something where it's infringing on personal liberty, but it seems to be good for the whole. So I really don't know where I stand on that. But I do think that if we look to correlations of other industries such as tobacco, such as alcohol, such as other drugs or marijuana, like there's regulations in those industries, and there's similar effects for some foods, but there's no regulations in place to sort of protect the consumer.
Well, I wonder why that is, Jamie. What do you think?
I don't know. Why? What are you getting at here? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess like in my heart, I feel like there shouldn't be regulations on these things because like I do think that there needs to be personal responsibility. And at the end of the day, like, you know, if you're someone that's going to fall victim to like some of these traps, like I think that a lot of those people are going to have issues sort of no matter what. And so trying to hold people's hands by making regulations, I'm not really, I tend to be against that. But I do also have compassion for the logic that, you know, like a lot of these things do hurt people. And I can understand the logic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting line. I think it's a tough one to draw. And everyone will be everywhere on it. I wonder what the comments are going to be on this video, by the way. It's a very interesting one.
This is going to be a really interesting video. My channel has been like 100 straight news or hand reviews. And I'm going to be like, here's a conversation me and Jamie had about some various topics. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure.
Healthcare and like, you know, when you should turn pro. It's we really cover the gamut here.
Yeah.
There might be future, Doug, because I have to say, I take issue with a lot of the things you tweet. I see them, and they put me on tilt a little bit sometimes.
Name one more thing. Name one thing that really tilted you that I tweeted.
See, I don't have a specific here. I didn't come prepared, but I think a lot of the times where I struggle is when you give a specific answer, and I'm just like, well, here's all these examples where it doesn't apply. You know, similar to the career, similar to the poker pro. Like
it's an average. It's an average, Jamie.
You're not talking
it's
to
an
an
average. I am talking to an
humans.
average. Oh my god, dude. I'm talking on average, there are things that will apply to the most people. And so when I say something that's like what I think people should do or what I think like you should aim for, it's as an average. It's not
Imagine
to every
if that was our approach
person.
in all industries. Imagine if the healthcare industry was just like, okay, we're going to tweet things out on average as to what you should do without any discussions about the modualities or the specifics that you should change or adjust. Like that would be a disaster. People would be dying all over the place, right?
Oh,
like,
I think it'd be better than it is now.
Okay, Doug, okay. All right, man. This is a little out of line.
Are you serious? Like, you can't look
I'm just saying, Doug.
You can't look at a tweet and be like, if I say, I think 100K a year is a good amount of money to strive for to be a pro, and be like, well, I am in a rural area with no taxes, so it could be 50K. Or I am in a major, like I'm in one of the most expensive cities in the world and have like these things, maybe it should be 200K. You don't think people, I think you're underestimating people, Jamie.
I'm not underestimating people. I think people can make that distinction, but when I read that, I'm just like, why is this guy assuming all of our situations? Why is he thinking he knows so much that he can tell all of us how to be? Because he doesn't know this or this or this or this or the context. That's what I see when I see it, Doug. And the reason I brought this up and I was poking, is because there might be future here. We disagree on a lot of things, but there might be a future in being able to debate some of these things in the poker industry, etc. I see promise. That's all.
There's certainly room for debate, that's for sure. But I'll tell you what, I'm not here to hold their hands. I'm here to tell them what I really think and try to help them. And if you want someone to give you a pat in the back and an 8th place trophy, you can head over and talk to Jamie, because it's not going to be me.
Don't drag me into American politics, Doug. Okay, we all know who you're symbolizing and who I'm symbolizing here on the political spectrum. That's all I'm gonna say. This has been fun. This has been enjoyable, and I don't know what happens from here. No, but seriously, Doug, thanks for taking the time and talking about it. I think it was interesting. And until the next Twitter argument.
Sounds good, man. Let's do it again sometime.
All right. Cheers. Thank you all so much for watching again. This is not something we regularly do here on this channel. But if you liked it anyways, drop a subscribe and I will know, like, hey, a lot of people subscribing because of this video. Maybe we should make some more podcasts and some more conversations. Maybe I should get in more debates on Twitter. Thank you guys so much for watching the show. I really appreciate it. But until next time, we'll see you later.